Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we're here to review Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Season 2 Part 1, or Mushoku Tensei 2 Isekai Itada Honki Dasu. I don't know if I said that right, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, what is the story behind Mushoku Tensei Season 2? The story starts off where we follow Rudeus after he has finally been left all on his lonesome, and he decides to just go off and go find his mother, who is still missing after the big disappearance incident that happened across the world. And during all that, he meets some new adventurers, tries to get to know them better, and eventually will go on to places like school and stuff. But a lot of that is spoilers, so we're not going to dive too deep into that. But yeah, that's a basic story summary. It's not the best, but we're just going to roll with it. So, in terms of spoiler-free thoughts, honestly, I love Season 2 so far. Even though we're just in the first half of this whole season, I absolutely loved how they took things. Sure, the beginning of it was kind of a bit at times, but overall I found myself absolutely loving this season. And it's weird because I did see some people complaining like, oh man, it's more chill, it's not really going anywhere, it's just doing its own thing. But personally, I really love that about this season, as it takes things at kind of a slower pace than the first season did, where they were just throwing things at you again and again and again, and you kind of had to just roll with it. But in this season, they take things at a much slower pace, and I actually kind of appreciated that, especially with all the stuff that happens in the first few episodes compared to the rest of the season. And I really just absolutely love this season. I had such a great time with it, and it reminded me why I love Mushoku Tensei so much. I loved all the different things that kept happening between character interactions. I love the whole school element that comes in later in the story. Just, there are so many amazing things about this season that I want to praise. For one, everyone talks about it because it's well known. The animation, great for this season. I'm not going to talk about it much because I don't really care about that. But the animation, as many people have said, is great. It's great animation for a great story. And moving on past that, it's amazing just how motivated and interested you can be in a story like this. Like when I was watching, a certain event comes up that I can talk about in the spoiler section, but when it came up and they focused so much on it throughout the rest of the season, all I could think was, why am I so invested in this, and why do I really want to see what happens next? Like, it's just amazing how they take something that really shouldn't keep my interest that long and I'd be annoyed by, but instead makes it feel like it's a whole growth moment for the main characters in the story. And I just really love how they handle everything and how everything is paced, with the exception, I guess you could say, of the first few episodes. Going into one small little gripe I kinda had with this season, it's that the beginning really isn't that amazing. It's not the worst. Like, I do enjoy the fact that we kind of get a bit more about Rudeus's whole situation and the way he kind of feels after Aries left, but it definitely feels like when it comes to earlier in the season compared to later in the season, you could tell they had way more passion for the later half than the earlier half, since the earlier half has a lot of stuff that just kind of like skimmed through. You kind of just have to roll with it. It's still good, but it kind of brought things a bit down at times, and really felt like it was just trying to rush through everything, get things moving, while also telling the story enough so that you actually understand where everything's leading, not trying to be too forceful with how it's trying to skim through things. But moving on past that for now, one thing I kind of like to talk about here is that I honestly also really love the cast of the season. Without going into who really appears, we have a bunch of new characters that are introduced in this season that we get to interact with and talk with. And there's a lot of new fascinating concepts that are explored that I absolutely love, and how we get to kind of get an idea of these different types of people, their personalities, the traits that they have from being different kinds of species. And I just love all the different interactions we see. And before I knew it, the whole season kind of blew by. Like, I was amazed at how quickly this season flew by for me, and why I just felt like, dude, I want to see more. And part 2 of this season cannot come quick enough, because I absolutely want to see more. I'm so excited to see more of Rudeus' adventures, and I just want to see more of what happens. All the different lore that's dropped in this season, all the different ideas and concepts. I want to see more. I want to explore more, because overall, I had an amazing time with this season. It was so much fun, and as I was watching, all I could think was, why is this so freaking good? There's this whole one episode where they're just talking. Why is that good? Why does this whole episode feel like it's meant to be longer? Like, how do these things play out? It's just amazing at how much stuff keeps me invested in the story. But yeah, if I were to file one more complaint in this little conversation of mine, this little review, it's not really a complaint as much as a surprising moment, I guess. It's definitely just more surprising, and that's the fact that unlike in season 1, in season 2, the series has an opening theme, which personally, it's a good song, but it feels more like an ending theme song to me. Maybe it's just me, but whenever I listen to the opening theme for this season, it feels less like I'm watching an anime opening and more like I'm watching an anime ending. And that's just how I feel, because it doesn't feel like something I'd expect from an anime opening. Still a good song though, I will say that. Great song. Just not the right vibe here and there. It definitely just, it feels out of place. I even felt this when I would play it in earlier episodes where it was still showing things. It just felt like once they included an OP, it just kind of felt awkward, I guess. Like the opening is good. It's pretty solid, but I do feel like it felt very out of place compared to what Mushoku Tensei did in the first season, where it just played different songs while showing all the world around us when we're watching the show, and it just felt a bit off, I guess. That's all I can really say. It just felt really off, but whatever, that's all I can really talk about without spoiling, so we're just gonna hop into the spoiler section now. Here's a timestamp to when the spoilers end. If you have seen the show, I'd recommend sticking around and hear my thoughts, but if you haven't, just get to the end so you'll get spoilers. But again, if you have seen it, or if you don't really mind spoilers, you can stick around and hear my thoughts. So yeah, I'm gonna cut up for 5, and I'm going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so in terms of what I want to talk about the characters, I really enjoyed the cast in this. The fact that we got to kind of see the return of a few characters that we originally didn't see, as well as some introductions to new characters, I just had such a great time with it. For example, during the starting part of the story, Rudeus suffers from ED, aka erectile dysfunction. And when he does go through that, he finds himself struggling to deal with all these different problems and struggles. And he ends up being this one character called Soldat, who, honestly, I'm sure a lot of people understand where I'm coming from when I said that I really didn't like his character when he was first introduced. Because he was very rude to Rudeus, didn't really like him at all, but then he eventually just became a bro. He was cool to hang around. It was fun seeing him and Rudeus interact, since it turns out that the two of them could actually talk with one another and get to know each other. And I really enjoyed seeing all of that happen, since it really made you think, maybe Soldat isn't actually that bad of a character. Maybe he actually is a decent character. And I personally really liked that. I thought Soldat was a very fun addition after he went through his whole I hate Rudeus phase, and once he got over to the I like Rudeus phase, he was a lot of fun to watch. But going on to some other characters from this season, another one I want to talk about is what many people probably would think about talking about, and that's Sarah. Sarah is an interesting case, since I might have been alone in this, but when I first saw the art, I thought that Sarah looked just like Rudeus' mom, so I thought he had just found her and she was off on adventures and they were traveling together. But no, Sarah is a completely different character. I don't know why I thought she was the same character, but it turns out that Sarah has a lot of connections and like personality traits to Ares, aka the girl who left Rudeus, causing him to have the ED in the first place. And the fact that we kind of learned through her and her interaction with Rudeus and how she kind of fell in love with him only for when they were about to do the deed, he ends up not being able to get it going. I just found the whole thing kind of both entertaining but also uncomfortable, since as I mentioned, the pacing felt a bit weird at times. I still liked it, don't get me wrong, but the pacing at times felt a bit forced forward. Like, it felt like Sarah was trying to get a connection with Rudeus, but we weren't really given an explanation as to why she felt so defensive of him at times. I did watch some videos afterwards that explained kind of her own issues with Rudeus and how she felt about him, but those aren't explained in the anime, so I felt like I lost the context for a little bit. But overall, I definitely feel like Sarah's whole thing in this was kind of rough to sit through at times. Again, not because of some of the issues that it deals with, but because of the fact that the storyline felt a bit off to me. Still overall, her whole character had her role to play in this, and while I didn't really mind her being there, I prefer the main matchup they created for this season, aka the connection of Sylphie and Rudeus finally coming back together, finally seeing each other again, though they don't reveal themselves as each other's best friend until episode 11. Even so, I really enjoyed it. I thought the whole school interaction between the two of them, as they both managed to get into the school, was super interesting, and I really wanted to see where things went, and it went in a really interesting direction, as I really enjoyed how much more of a school focus this had. Not like the actual school's like education and stuff, but the fact that we actually focused around the school rather than just saying, oh, they're at a school, but they're off doing something completely different. Because the school still plays an element in this. It acts as the grounds to kind of get us introduced to all these different characters, from all the weird ones such as Bodygotti or some other returning characters, such as Zanoba or Cliff, who both make appearances here. We get to see all these really cool returns of characters as well as new characters that are introduced, and I really like the different interactions we have with all these different people, especially with how we get to explore more of the world, especially when Rudeus and Zanoba went over to pick up Julie, who is this dwarf that they bought to help with Zanoba's love for statue making, or figurine making. And I just loved how the different interactions happen between these characters. I love the fact that we don't just kind of move on past them and only focus on Rudeus and Sylphie. I love how we actually get to see all these different characters. And I love how we interact with them, especially with how Rudeus is doing all these cool things, showing off that he actually isn't a normal magician, but he's not the only one in the world who could do this kind of stuff. Like how he meets Sylphie, or as she's called in this, Mr. Fitz, for a while. She can also do chantless magic and stuff like that, and it kind of reminds me that there's more people out there in the world. And I just really like how they handled all these different characters and how they worked with everything. And I keep saying how much I loved it because there's not really any complaints I had. Like, as I was watching each and every episode, I was having a blast. Each episode flew by in the blink of an eye. Even this one episode that came in at a very surprising moment. I did not expect this at all. We were introduced to a new character, well, not really a new one, but a character we hadn't seen since season 1, that being Shizuka, who really kind of creeps me out a little bit. And I really like the fact that when Rudeus sees her for the first time, he actually suffers kind of like a panic attack situation. Since who wouldn't kind of have a panic attack when they literally see the person who was there when they nearly died, who was working with Orsted? And I just love the fact that she kind of gives us a bit more lore to this world and stuff, as it turns out that Shizuka is actually a transport from another world. She's actually the girl, I believe, who Rudeus tried to save before he died and got reincarnated. And it's really interesting how apparently, oh, this world isn't just for Rudeus. Turns out other people have been here too. However, unlike him, Shizuka doesn't like this world and she wants to go back. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, as we get to see this character who, unlike Rudeus, doesn't like this world, doesn't like to see how things play out, and doesn't want to deal with any of it, compared to Rudeus, who really likes it here. And it's especially interesting with some of the ways they handle her and Rudeus meeting, such as how when they first meet and Mr. Fitz is in the room, in order to kind of represent the fact that they're speaking a different language from what Fitz actually recognizes, they make it so that way everyone starts speaking the main tongue of that fantasy world instead of Japanese, which normally we keep as Japanese for the convenience of the story. And I really just like about the fact that when they did that, they tried their best to help you get an idea of that these two people are Japanese, they're speaking Japanese, and Fitz does not understand any of that. She doesn't get any of it and doesn't understand what the heck they're talking about, the type of things they're discussing, and I like the way they handled that. And there's also this whole thing where when Shizuka is talking with Rudeus, she originally takes off her mask because she thinks she can open up to him and relate since they're both Japanese, but then when she learns that he doesn't want to go back, she puts it back on as if hiding herself away again, which I think is a really interesting show of the way things are handled in her perspective. And overall, I just love this season, the way it introduces things, but also can make things just fun. Like, as I mentioned, that whole thing with Rudeus and Shizuka, it actually, funny enough, was mainly just an entire episode. Them just talking with one another and discussing things. It was basically almost all talking. And yet, despite that, the episode was over in the blink of an eye. I had no idea how fast it went by. It was so intense. And while it added a lot of lore to the world, we still got a lot of really nice moments, especially with Sylphie, who eventually does reveal herself to Rudeus, and they confess their love. And after a bit of aphrodisiac, they managed to do the deed, and Rudeus is cured of his ED, which, weirdly enough, I didn't think I'd be rooting for, but somehow this show makes me root for somebody getting cured of their ED. And it's just amazing how this story can make me care about that. And I also love how, at the end of it, Rudeus, when asked about how he'll handle things with Sylphie, he's literally just like, I want to marry her. And I think that's really awesome too. And just the last episode in particular was just so wholesome. I loved it, and overall, season 2 so far has just been incredible. The beginning was a bit iffy, but overall, I thought the season was great, and I'm very excited to see where things go in part 2 of season 2. But yeah, that's all we have to say, so we're at the conclusion of this video, and what are my final thoughts? Overall, fantastic season. Mushoku Tensei once again proves how great it is. It does an amazing job with the storytelling. Beginning was a bit iffy at times, but overall, I had an amazing time. And that's why I gave Mushoku Tensei Season 2 Part 1 a 9 out of 10. Fantastic. I'm very excited to see more. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I had a great time, and that's all we have to say, so thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also do anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!